Welcome to the Image Critique Show with Jeff Johnson, Rick Avalos, and their special guest. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for trusting us again for another month of hopefully photography education, some silliness, lots of good smiles. Rick, how are you this evening, sir? Good to see you again.
Doing well, buddy. How you doing?
Doing all right, doing all right. Cliff, thanks for joining us again as our steadfast. I mean, if it wasn't for Cliff, I tell you what, I don't know what would happen. I'm afraid to wonder what would happen. How you doing, Cliff?
Anyway, yes, I'm here and it's good to be here and welcome everybody. You bet.
So what we're doing tonight, we actually have somebody who's logging in, hopefully from Sydney, Australia, which if she does log in, that's very cool. We've had a lot of people joining us on at least on the website and such from around the world. So that's our goal, is to be worldwide. So I guess that's going to be, if she does join us, I don't see it yet. She'll be the farthest one away. So none of the rest of you. Yeah, there she is right there.
We'll know who it is because their name will be upside down.
And that's what to expect if you're new here. All right. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So what we are doing this evening, for all of you, some of you are new, but our normal image critique thought process is for you folks to submit some of your work. And Rick and I, and then we always have a guest. I hate to use the word judge because it seems so formal. A guest with us to just chat about your images and give you points of view from what we see on how great the image is, or things we could suggest to improve or change or whatever. Tonight, just for fun, I'm not sure. We'll see if it's fun by the time we're done. You'll have to let us know if you had fun or not. We're going to supply the images, and you folks are going to tell us what you think. Rick, you want to try and explain how we're going to run this?
Yeah, again, it's a night designed really for fun, but we never leave education out of the mix. So it's your opportunity to evaluate the images, and Jeff has been kind enough to put the 12 elements of design in your chat box. So we would certainly want you to refer to them. You can refer to one or two elements that catch your eye in a particular image. Offer some, as jurors are trained, there's a method that has kind of a nickname. It's called the sandwich method. And I don't think that's specific just to photographer jurors, but any type of evaluation or critiquing where, you see in our case, you see an image and okay, you see all the nice things about it and you say, well, I really like the way the composition is handled. I like the way the lighting just rim lights the subject. As far as concerns, now that's the middle part of the sandwich. I feel that there's a little bit, the color might be off just a little bit. We've got this particular couple, a little boy and a little girl, but I'm not getting the story because storytelling, of course, is one of the elements. So I'm just kind of going down some of the elements, the lighting, the composition, the storytelling, and all of the others. So you don't have to hit every one of those elements, just something that might speak to you and then address that. And as I mentioned with the middle part of it, something constructive that, you might consider, because a lot of times we hear in these evaluations and these critiques where I would have done this, or if I were doing it, well, that's nice. Go ahead and do it your way. But this is this person's image. So, the verbiage and the way people are addressed and their images are addressed, we feel is very, very important. So instead of maybe saying I would have done it this way, just nice and soft. You might consider doing something like this. Maybe consider a different color matte. Maybe consider detaching the key line, something along that line. And when we do have our judges come in at our state judgings, I always like to visit with them and just well, and this is an excellent case. that we're not necessarily judging images. We're wanting to offer uh, some points that you feel would help the image. So when we do get our judges together, there are a couple things that we like to visit about. And number one is assumptions. We want to make sure that we don't assume certain things. For instance, a lot of times you'll hear a judge say, well, that moon that was placed there uh, could have been placed in a little better position. And then later on, you talk to the photographer, and the photographer says, I don't know what that judge was talking about. I didn't drop a moon in there. So, it can really look bad for the judge, certainly, and for the system itself. So we really want to, make sure that we don't make assumptions, that we say something along the line. It just appears to me that, the moon, I don't know, it just something funky's going on there, that type of a thing. And I will offer this caveat when it comes to making assumptions. And we talk about that all the time with when we begin our competitions, in my opinion, you're allowed one assumption. And that assumption is that the maker is either sitting beside you or right behind you.
Right.
And when we keep that in mind, I think that gives us that motivation to be a little softer in the way we approach our evaluations and our quote, quote, critiques. You're certainly welcome uh, to raise your hand. If we're noticing some downtime, we're going to get this started and probably, calling out someone and, Michelin, what's your thought? What are your thoughts about this? And if everyone is coming in right after one and another, we want to avoid downtime. We want to get everything that we can in the time that we have to share with you. So, and if you really have something to offer and just go ahead and turn on your mic and just say, I have something to offer if I may. Jeffy, Cliffy, have we covered it, or is there
I
something
think so. I mean, obviously, the judging workshop goes on for a week. So to train people the way that we've been trained is we can keep going on about that. This is more of a, like you said, a fun exercise, if you will. I think it's what I like about it is the fact that it's harder to critique our own images. I've told this story before. I'll prepare something for a competition. I think it's already, I'm excited about it. I send it to Rick and he sends a punch list back with about 10 or 15 things that I could do differently. Not right or wrong, just different. Check this out. Look at this, what it is. And again, what it's done is it's taught me how to look at my images in a different way. So looking at somebody else's images, it is easier to look at those kind of things. Again, it's not so much how you would have done it differently, but it's kind of relying on, and I want to make sure at the top of the chat box, we have the 12 elements of design. It's a PDF that you can click and open. If you don't see it, I'll reload it because I did load it earlier. But those elements of design are kind of your guidelines for what to look for in an image. Now, you're not going to necessarily, we don't have time for you to look and apply all 12 of them to an image when it's your turn to talk, nor do all 12 of them always apply. But if you haven't looked at them, just look at it because the first one is impact. That's going to be the one that we always talk about quite a bit. And then technical excellence is the other one that quite often is the issue where an image just isn't sharp and it should be to submit a competition. So it's all at your own comfort level. And we will get started. And by all means, if you have, so this exercise I wanted to add to is there's no right or wrong. There's no attaboys or prizes. It's about your feelings, your objective opinions. It's about sharing ideas and thoughts and learning from it. And feel free if somebody makes a comment about an image and then you want to come up next and talk about the same image. If you disagree with that last person, it's not an argument. It's just, well, here's what I see instead. So it's just kind of, in a sense, proving your point. Again, personal preference. But let me go ahead and I'm going to.
And if those of you who have been through competition, you see that happens, where a judge will say, well, I see the point you're making. I don't particularly agree, or I respectfully disagree, because this is what I see in it. And that's what makes our system, I feel, superior because there's 5 on a panel and you have that many opinions to kind of hash out and come to one conclusion.
Exactly. All right, gang. Well, let's go ahead. I'm going to start with an image called Alaskan Sunset. And one of the rules of the elements and let's see, they're asking me to repost that, so let me do that as well here. One of the things that I know is very important is in the titling. That's why titling is so important. It's going to tell a story. So, Cliff, you got the helm as far as I don't have my panel up. Who's anybody raising their hands? Go ahead and call on them. Let them work on it.
I don't see anybody that yet. Come on, folks.
Okay, I just put the elements of design back up in the chat box so you guys can open. It's a PDF, so everybody should be able to open it.
Okay, Don just raised his hand, so go ahead, Don.
Yes, for impact I'm dealing with a smaller screen, but basically that church right in front, the sun absolutely lighting up that with that red roof. It just absolutely makes that jump out at you, and is very nicely offset with the pastels in the back, the foreground, and the sunset in the sky. I like this narrow picture, or the wide view on this one. That's a term I'm looking for. Anyhow, for this one, it allows you to get that main subject fairly close to the center, but it leaves a lot of breathing space around there, and everything comes into that spot.
Very well said. Good
Very
job.
good.
Yeah, you're hired.
Kathy Ferguson, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. And I'm on a fairly small screen too, so bear with me if I'm not seeing all the fine details in this. I really like it. Same things that were said, just kind of the highlighting and the lighting. One of the other things I really like about this is the texture, especially from kind of the right side of the island over to the left edge of the picture. So I might pull in that right side a little bit, but with the mountain range and the ripple in the water, it just seems like a really nice combination of textures across the page, and having that kind of purplish pinkish tone everywhere but on the island like that, I think it was just a really nice way of highlighting the central image.
And I'll just jump in. One of our other viewers, Rita, has typed in. She doesn't have a microphone tonight, so she's typed in. She likes the panorama size. However, she finds that the file seems to be a little oversaturated. The blue seems a little intense, and I will agree. I think the blue seems to be just a tiny bit intense. Blue is a real questionable one because people either like it or they don't. But that would be probably the one thing I would say too, is that there's maybe just a little bit too much intensity in the blue. Good stuff.
Good comments.
All right, let's move on. Next image. Boat race.
Cliff, you want to call someone out?
Well, nobody has raised their hand yet. Don, go ahead.
Well, I guess my experience of doing this online and coaching 2 or 3 people worldwide, lots of detail, nice bright light on the boats. My main thing is that the tension created by these guys are going to crash into that wall really quickly. Just leaves too much empty space on the left. Otherwise, like I said, the boats and their rigging, and I can almost read those ship mast flags at the top. If I blow it up, I can get there, but just right now I can't.
I see something on the left side. I can't tell what it is behind the boat. It's
right
in
here?
the sky. It looks like a line.
There's a square. I see it too. There's a square right here.
Yep.
And it's just, those are some of the things that happen with your digital images. And I can definitely attest to that because I just did this last weekend. And an image I created, I put something in the sky and thought I blended it well. And when you take the image down to the smaller pixel size for competition for the monitors, these kind of things will show up. So maybe more of a word of caution when you take your whatever size your original TIFF or PSD is, if it's a 30-inch file or something, and you reduce it to the dimensions that are required for that competition. Make sure you sit there for a second and bring it up in your screen at a decent size and look it over, because I went from what was that image, Rick? 88, 89 down to
Mhm.
77, because
Yep. Yep.
that break your heart, guys. And this is the kind of thing we're talking about. This falls under number 4 of technical excellence. Say that one fast. But you can see this little bit of a area right here, and I also see something over here doing the same thing. So yeah, so just some things to look out for. Kim, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to mention that, but then I was going to say on the far left horizon where the water meets the mountains there, there's just a tiny little piece that
Right here.
perhaps to clone out. Yeah, just to
Yep.
perhaps to pull that off the edge or
Yep.
remove it or something like that.
Rick, why don't you talk about that little rule? Because that's something that we talk about quite a bit, the stuff on the edge of a file.
Yeah. When we have those little edges like that, it's so darn simple to take out. But it's a tangent point that draws the eye, because the eye is always going to go to the area of highest contrast, and that's what we do because we have the boats. The light color against the dark base and the medium tone background, and that's nice that we look at that. But then as we journey through the image, we start seeing these other little things like the line left of the image, and then the little point that Kim brought out. So, these are the kind of things that we talk about. Gosh, just nitpicking, but boy, that's what makes the difference between the images that do well and the images that soar.
I just like the movement of the boats. I think you'd feel that more if you left a little more space to the right side instead of so much to the left. And like Don had said, they're kind of like going to crash into
A
that
little
wall.
closer. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
something that you'll hear a lot about from PPA jurors, is that we need to have room for it to travel. So whether
Yeah.
the boats, this is right of center, we want to open this up and give him more room, or crop it
Right.
differently, things like that.
Yeah, and there's an argument too that can be made that it being the subjects being that near to the right side of the composition adds a feeling of tension. And personally, when I see images like this, it's acceptable to me because it appears to me like the boats are racing, and that adds to that anxiousness, that tension.
Helps tell the story better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. I have another one here. This is kind of cool. This is going to challenge a few folks here, and it is called Caddo Lake. But here's the image. There we go. Look at the people volunteering. Good stuff.
There we go, Michelin. And we got 2 others. So Michelin first.
This one actually looks like an infrared raw file to me. I like the composition. It does have a level of interest and mystique going on. Although when I'm looking at it towards the center and then to the right, where it would look like the reflection underneath the trees to the right, now you can see it looks, I can't tell what's going on there. Like it's
You're talking
floating
like-
a little bit to the right, a little bit further
Right over here.
underneath those trees. See the 4 tree trunks? I can't tell. Or is that kind of where the trees meet the water? I can't.
Yeah, let me
Yeah,
get, I don't know, there's green marks in the way. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say here's your tree water line right there, right there, right there.
Okay.
And of
Probably
course,
just my
part
screen.
of judging that you're going to find is your own perspective of situations, scenes, stories of how you know them, you've experienced them in your life, and that's the kind of thing that you have to use as your base to make a statement, but also remember that it is your expression. So you have to kind of look at it, is this realistic? I mean, do these reflections look realistic, or do they look like they've been doctored? And one thing, did we say this, Rick, about in judging, is if you see something that doesn't look like it belongs, don't just jump right in and say that. Be a little more eloquent about, I'm not sure I understand how this element works with this scene or things like that. So you're saying you're making the point, but you're not being mean about it by just saying, yeah, that doesn't work. Because that's more of a slap in the face, and that's what we're not trying to do. You can
Yeah.
point out that it doesn't work, but in a nice way. I'm not saying you
Was
said
I
it
being
wrong.
mean about it?
Yeah, no, exactly. And you weren't at all. That's what I'm saying. Is I didn't mean to,
Oh, okay.
I wasn't thinking of that because of what you said. You did it fine. I'm just happened to make me think of it. So who else wants to say a word?
Kim had her hand up. Kim?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this image is super powerful and it really has a lot of emotion to it. Probably the red color. And I feel, there's just a lot of feelings that come in with it. I really like how the trees on the left and the trees on the right kind of bring you into that center tree. And, there's a bunch of significance when I look at it with that tree, and it makes me wonder, how that all came about. I like the presentation with it. Just a couple things on the edge I would clean up or suggest that there's a little piece on the lower left that's sticking up just
Oh,
kind
this
of
guy
right
right here?
there. Yep.
Yep.
And perhaps on the left side of the frame,
I would have
just take
darkened that
that
area a
piece.
little bit. Yeah.
Yep. And then maybe explore some other options for a title. Because I feel like there should be emotion in the title with this one because there is so much
Yeah,
emotion.
we've talked about titles over time, and if there's time at the end of the show, let's talk about them again, or maybe we actually need to have a program on it, Rick, on
Yeah.
title because it's so important. But so okay, so let's move on. We've gone over the mark pretty well here, so let's move on. Sorry, Paige, we'll get back to you.
That's why you guys got to jump in quick.
Takes a while to look at the image though.
You know what, Rick, tell them about that. When we're
Okay,
sitting in
yeah,
the chair, so to speak, what do we have?
sure will. Yeah, you're right. It takes a while to look at the image, but as far as from an evaluation point of view or judging, if you will, you look at the image and those elements are really the guide. So you're thinking, okay, nice lighting, composition's good, presentation, boom, 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 and then you put in your score. Because if we take what we feel is the luxury of time to really go over an image before we comment on it, the impact is going to start to wane. So yeah, you don't you gotta. I guess what I'm trying to say is let it come from the heart instead of from the head, and then use the elements to guide you, in your commentary.
Yeah, good point, because you'll have this desire, I guess is the word, to want to say the right thing. I don't know that there is. I think if you're delivering something, make it more eloquent to a point as opposed to just, I would never have done that. I mean, we've heard those judges, well, 30, 40 years ago I've heard judges say, well, I wouldn't even say one of them because it's just not even nice, but I don't like that kind of an image, so I'm going to give it a low score.
Yeah.
We're all smarter than
That-
that, but yeah.
Now, in that previous image, and I know we need to move on, but in terms of composition, how often have we heard about the rule of thirds and the central tree? I mean, it was bullseye. And in my opinion, this is one of those cases where, and I don't even want to call them rules, they're just really guidelines of composition because that central composition bullseye composition really made that image because we had those left and right sides that were converging lines that led right into it. So, just thoughts that
Well, it definitely tells the viewer where to look, doesn't it? That's
for sure.
Okay, so the next one we have, this is going to throw you for a loop here because it's totally different, but this is how life goes, is called first position. So this is, you know what, honestly, this is tough because we're sitting on a panel and we know we have to be there. And there's 500 images to judge or 250 or whatever the number is. And there's going to be images that come up that you look at and go, oh, hell, I don't know what to say here. But then you rely on the elements of design. Pick an element and say, okay, this has, yeah, look at the composition and talk about the composition.
can
Because
I
you guys know this stuff. Go ahead, Cliff, what are you saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll jump in to get started. To me,
Yeah.
this is about color. I mean, the cool greens against the red of her hair and your skin tones. I mean, the color alone is, to me, it's just it's dynamite with the use of color, and then it's almost geometric with that with her tutu and her hands. You can almost split that down the middle, and you got the two halves are almost identical. I mean, I love it. I can't take my eyes off this. Don.
Yeah, when you had your ruler up there, made it really showed off as Cliff said, the symmetry of this, and the fact, the color of the contrast between the what they have for their background matte, and the skin tones and all that. It just she jumps right off the page. That's all. Part of it is that's the main thing to me is the almost symmetry is really makes this piece.
Debbie had her hand up, I believe.
Yeah, I just really like the way they did the mat, and they didn't, it really doesn't distract from her, and the focus point of the hair and the hands. And I just really like the way they did this mat and the background. I think the background's just beautiful.
There's a nice,
As well as the subject matter, because I happen to like that subject matter a lot.
well, there's a nice symmetry between the like you said, Debbie, the head to the hands, and it keeps you moving around. And then you can go in and even follow the shape of the arms. And it's just doesn't have to be these patterns, but it's movement. You guys mentioned the vertical posturing of the model altogether, and then you have the circle contrasting that. So I mean, it's just really beautifully done in terms of just the design element. And again, you don't always have to have all 12 elements, do you, Rick, in a scene?
No, not at all.
This is called Flight of Fancy. And this will be a challenge. This will definitely challenge what you know, what you like. And again, refer to the 12 elements and pick something out that you think you can help either. We don't want to find bad, but if there's something you don't like, the elements will help you describe that better. So who's up?
I think this is very creative, very original. I like the movement that's going on in this image. The one thing that I am kind of that got my attention was that we have a couple of feet that are just kind of look to be floating from my screen. I don't know if that's just my screen, because the pants on the guy are kind of dark.
Good catch.
Like in this area right here.
Yeah, I don't know where's all of
No,
his
good
legs
catch.
are.
And then the foot beneath the lady's arm.
Yeah.
So on my screen, I see the pant leg against the background. So that's one of the things.
I see it on the one foot, but not on the other.
Yeah. That's one thing that happens in competition, especially now that we're all at home on our own monitors. As well calibrated as we think we may be, things like that happen. But no, I think you need to talk about good stuff.
I like basically the flow of her hair is absolutely arresting. That strawberry blonde against the black is the only tone that's there that is unique. So that part I fortunately just calibrated my screen about 2 weeks ago, so I can see all those legs, all the pant materials and stuff. But my concern is with the similarity of their hand. Well, they're not totally. To me, the similar arcs of their hands and arms, the difference in their leg positions is just doesn't quite make it for me.
Okay, good stuff.
I find it kind of strange with his hand and his foot. Initially, they were kind of melded together.
Mhm.
It's just kind of a strange. I wish there were a couple inches of separating his hand from his foot.
And that can make or break an image sometimes. If there's just that little space in between, it gives more definition between the
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Kathy, how about your comments and maybe even something about the lighting, please?
Sure. I like this a lot. I like the feeling of the energy in it. And I think the lighting coming from the front is really nice around that. I love it in her skirt. One of the things that, I was trying to think about kind of the, what was it? The center of interest around this. And I keep looking at each of them and wishing they were looking at each other, maybe a little bit. So they're looking forward, but I think with the square framing, for me, I don't know if having a little more room in front of them
That
might
agree.
give a sense of motion or so I like technically what it's doing, but I'm not quite sure where to look. I keep going all over the place in terms
Yeah.
of the center.
And that was my point too. I think a little crop from the bottom and the top and allowing quite a bit more to the left and almost making a bit of a pano out of it. I
Over
think,
here.
yeah, oh yeah.
And again, as I mentioned earlier, this kind of a thing in judging, looking at other images and talking about them gives you a little bit better perspective on your own work. So let's try this one. This is a tough one. So hear the words: forked arrangement.
Kathy, go ahead.
I mean, I like the colors in this and kind of the color panel in it. I was at a point when you called my name of wondering if it's too much of one or not, but there's something about that center fork and kind of the gold coloring that's coming off of that keeps catching my eye that I like, but it feels like there's a lot going on. So it was taking me a little bit to kind of take it in.
Yeah, a good bit of detail, but she was commenting about that yellow golden glow in the middle is a nice touch. But I see a technical issue with especially those three forks, because you've got three separate forks stacked on top of each other. It's hard to separate the bowls from the edges there. So it at first it didn't look quite right.
You mean like the edges of the forks, like here you talk about? Like
Yeah, there, but you got those three stacked on top of each other. You got the pickle, I'll call it a pickle fork, a salad fork, and a table fork,
There you go.
dead center. They're above center slightly. And for me, the framing is busy. With you got how many different, if you count it out there, you got how many different rectangles and key lines. Just seems to be there's a place for it, but it just doesn't. It's not in my house.
It's kind of much. We've talked about the presentation, which is all this stuff is here. I think this would have been plenty if they would have just left it as being this been the edge of the image of the frame itself, because it's a nice contrast between the straw or whatever this is and the wooden frame. But adding all the other things to it, I think, is maybe a little much. Any other thoughts on the framing or the
Do
matting?
you think that the forks are sitting in a metal tin?
I
And
think that's
and
kind
then
of,
they're
yeah, I think
playing
that,
off of that to do, well, beyond that. Yeah, it looks like they're sitting in a metal tin or a copper tin.
the framing piece is you're saying it's kind of the inside of a metal tin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what caught my eye. And then they're
Kind of like a tray.
Yeah, like they're
playing
laying
off
in a tray.
Yeah, yeah.
And Joseph is got his hand up.
All right, Joe, good job.
Yeah, for me, my eye keeps going to the brightness of that, whether that's a metal pen or whatever, it's drawing it away from the forks, which are the subject. And so maybe might consider darkening that up, which would also make maybe the frame be less busy.
Yeah, that's the thing we talk about in composition, which is many topics, is what is the story you're trying to tell? What is the focal point? Where do you want the judges, the viewer to look at? And if the forks are the story, we are seeing this brightness here. We are seeing this brightness here. Even this isn't bad, but it's better than that. But all these other things are pulling your eye away from the story we want to tell. I think this would be a cool image if it was just cropped like this, and then just have a simple mat put around it. Different opinions, different thoughts. That's what we get. Yeah, so Terry mentioned, what about having a silver colored mat framing it rather than a copper? Yeah, all those little things. And that, again, that's why we have panels of 3 or 5 judges so that we can have all these different comments and ideas. And it doesn't mean that because the judge tells you one thing, it's necessarily wrong. It's just different. And sometimes if 2 or 3 judges all say it, then you want to definitely contemplate whether they know what they're talking about or not. Let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's go to In the Mist. One of the first things I see, and I'll just throw this at you, and can be good, can be bad. Oh man, I'd love to hang that on my wall. So if you had that thought, it's very complimentary, it's very cool, but you also hadn't have to stand back and go, okay, let's be real about it, because you'll fall in love with an image and absolutely buy it from them, from the maker, but you also have to look back and say, okay, are there things that are good, bad, or indifferent? So who has a thought?
I really like the softness and the serenity of it and this watercolor feel around the edges before you get to the mat. And that little pop of gold on the 2 further away boats.
And that really applies towards the first element there of the storytelling and the feeling of impact. That's very huge positive.
Don has his hand up, and then Debbie.
This one, what jumped out at me is the composition. Everything's pointing from the front right, from the right edge all the way back, and you've got all this triangle shape from the top of the mast, from the keel water lines, everything pointing back to that back, and you've got this great sharp image of the closer boat, and it's kind of dark, but it points towards the golden that has already been pointed out in the back.
I think it's a really sweet photograph. It looks like a watercolor. I just wonder if the maker, I just wonder why the double mat. It's very classical, and I tend to like a lot of classical things, but I'm just thinking it may detract a little bit from the beauty of the work itself. I don't think it's necessary, just something really simple. And I like the white. I think his their color choices are great. The subject matter is good. It has good impact. I just wonder if that is somewhat of a distraction, and I kind of wonder what you guys think about it.
Well, we've talked about in the past making recommendations, and then if the maker would say, okay, the recommendation is the double mat. Let's just take one of the mats, the bottom mat out, and create that image, and then do a side by side.
Not quite the full effect, but you can see what Rick's saying.
Here's a little more modern now.
Okay, Ken has his hand up, plus 2 others.
Excuse me. For me, the double mat doesn't work. I think the double mat works great when you're hanging on the wall, but it doesn't seem to work very well. There are exceptions, of course. The front boat being a little bit clearer and sharper, and the back one's less so, tends to throw me off a little bit.
Michael's got his hand up. Michael, right?
Yeah. Hey, thanks. This is a great show tonight. Sorry I was a little bit late. So on this one here, I really like it. I mean, for what was discussed earlier and so forth, and I think it would look beautiful up on anybody's wall. But a couple of things I was just questioning, I guess, just from a photographic standpoint, and that is just seeing if there's consistency between. I'm trying to figure out what's going on, like in the sky. It's sort of like there's this. And I know the title mist and so forth, and I get the mist, but I'm just trying to figure out, there's a coloration that just seems to follow each of the different boats, that kind of orangish color that doesn't make its way. It's not consistent with all the way across. So I don't know if that was, kind of painted in. And then that makes me look down towards the water at the reflection. And reflections are typically darker, which this one is, than the natural sky. But then on the reflection down below, I'm trying to see if that same color is making its way into the same areas that it's appearing up there on the boat. So kind of going down into the water. It looks like it's up there on the top part, but I don't see it as much in that reflection down below. And it could just be me. I see, like, the other parts of the boats, the reflection looks pretty good. It's more the sky that I'm just trying to see if there's consistency there.
One thing that I'll just add to it is when you get, because I've had this issue with images when you've got a mist, foggy look, whatever, because I think that's what I'm seeing. And the color is interesting, but you don't see the flag as well because there's probably a little bit of a cloud right here. And if you look at this area right through here, it looks like there's a heavier cloud than there is on the mast right here and down here. So that's what's happening here. I would like to probably seen a little bit more. This mast kind of disappeared. I think somebody referred to that. And again, the bottom of the photo is again that we could have some fog, some water level fog that can block that out. But it just seems like there's the other masts are there a little bit. This one just totally disappears. Again, these are the things that we look at as a panel. I like the painted edge is nice, how it gives us that feeling. We talked about the matte. Mats mats are a game you'll never win because one judge will tell you this time that, oh, that should have been darker, and then you go home and make it darker and enter the next competition, and the next judge says that should have been lighter to go over this. So just know that you're never going to win the mat game. One thing I will mention that in competition, you see how the inner mat is thicker on the bottom and the top than the sides. I don't object to that, but I can almost promise you that a judge will tell you that it's uneven. I know there's not a rule that says it has to be even, but I can promise you somebody will hold that against you. All right, we got to move along to the next image.
Wait, question on that. What
Yeah,
if it's blatantly wider on the bottom, for example?
Yeah, you don't
Like
have to be.
obvious that
It
they
doesn't.
meant
Yeah,
to do that.
it doesn't have to be. Let me just open it back up again. It doesn't have to be the same, but it needs to be obviously more. Again, this one is the thickness here and the thickness here are thinner than the thickness here, but for my eyeball, the thickness here is thinner than here. So it's about, it doesn't have to be proportionately the same, even though you'll see that a lot. Some of the older, when we were doing mats years ago, the mat would be, the bottom would be the top and the two sides might be the same thickness and the bottom might be half again thicker. That's a common thing. Probably more about balance than anything else. Because if you have unevenness, if this is thicker than this, and this is thicker, and that's thicker than this, and this one's thinner over here, you will definitely lose some points and have a judge say something about that. That's just how it is. So if you're gonna be off, and I shouldn't say off, if you're gonna be different as far as thickness, be uniform and mathematical about it. Have it be a percentage of, like, if this is going to be thinner than this, make this one twice the thickness. So it looks obvious to a judge, I guess is where I'm going with it.
Okay, thanks.
Well, let's see. Ken has raised his hand.
First thing that caught my eye was, oh my God, that purple is horrendous.
The mat.
The triple matte, purple, some, as you say, some judges say one and thing and another. But that's what jumped out at me immediately was the purple. It doesn't really bother me, but I know judges will pick on the horizon line being right in the middle. But I don't think it's a big deal in this photograph because you got the nice colors in the sky, and then you got the surfers and the beach. So it's, to me, it seems fairly balanced, but you could probably get away with cropping down the sky a bit and maybe even cropping up from the bottom a little bit. On my screen, it looks to be a little bit oversaturated. I know a lot of times you can get colors that are very vibrant in the sky. The deep dark blue on the top, just to me, it just seems to be a little bit oversaturated.
Okay, there are two others that have their hand up. Michael.
Yeah, Ken stole some of what I was going to say. I had my hand raised, and then he popped right in with the matte color and so forth. And the word saturation, that was the other big thing that I had picked up on when I was looking at it right away too. It's just all of the colors look a little bit, while they're beautiful and sometimes nature gives you this, it looks like this was, some of it was a little bit manufactured by maybe pushing a saturation slider a little bit too far. And part of that is I'm just looking at the starkness of the blues up in the upper left corner and the upper right. So I wonder if they have, it looks like there's maybe a little bit of a vignette there that was put on it, but it starts to make it look a little bit unnatural as how that light is falling off, particularly on the left side from the bright orange clouds, and then it just dies real quickly on the left. So I'm guessing that they used a vignette, which works in a lot of images, but I'm not sure that it works here because it's giving me kind of a false look. But the big point that I saw right away when I saw it is this one just looks like the saturation's been pushed a little bit too hard.
Paige is up next. Paige, what do you got?
I completely can agree with Ken and what Michael have said. I would also add that the rocks that are more in the foreground than what's in the background need to be brought up. I mean, there's just no detail in there. To me, on my screen, it just looks completely black.
You talk about these guys right here in the front?
Yes. Yeah, so just having some detail, they can still be dark, but just add some more detail. And I think the sand line where the water meets the sand, that bothers me a little bit as well. But again, I think what Michael was saying about the vignette, maybe take the vignette out and see if that improves how that sand line looks. See if that helps.
Kind of over in this area then you're talking?
Yes.
I want to add something to this, and this is what happens. First of all, this image is a little older. We got this from a friend, and I want to say it's probably 30 years old. And this is in the PPA loan collection. And that long ago, these colors, these mattes, these lips, the saturation was something that was the trend. It's like babies wrapped in blankets now. Not right or wrong, it just is. So this, again, from what you guys have said about comments, I don't think it would have scored well today either because of all the things you're saying. The mattes catching your attention, the intensity of the colors, the line of the sand, the water, all those things. So I definitely agree with all of what you guys said, but it's just Rick has been kicked out of the room for some reason. He can't get back in. No, I guess he's back in. He says he's going to go watch Gunsmoke instead. So hope that's okay with you guys. Anyways, so yeah, it's just interesting. Again, I'm not saying this to say anybody's right or wrong because I definitely agree with all that you're saying, and I don't know that it would score that well. I think the theme, the concept, everything is good. The one thing about Horizon, this is also another question Ken, you mentioned, that is also a lot of times really a personal preference because technically it's right in the middle of the scene. There's a lot of judges that would just immediately rule it out right there because of that. But it's broken up by many pieces, so the horizon line isn't that obvious. Okay, that's okay. I get that too. Rural colors.
Ken raised his hand.
Okay, go ahead, Ken.
Well, based on what you just said on the previous image, this is probably an older image.
I know, I kind of gave that away, didn't I?
Yeah. The matte is, by at least by today's standards and my preferences, the matte is another one that just jumps out at you as kind of pretty gaudy. The concept is really nice. But like on the previous one, I think the colors are oversaturated. That kind of orange in the upper right looks like there's still quite a bit of detail in there, but it just looks oversaturated, like the yellow and the green and blue and everything. But
kind of start effervescing, don't they?
Yeah, it's almost fluorescent.
Yeah.
But the concept with the lines and the triangles and patterns, I think is really well done.
This is Cliff. If I could jump in, I think the oversaturation works here. It's kind of a graphic image, and I think the bold colors really work. I don't think the black and white works. I think those colors were. I think, as a graphic image, the saturated colors in this case work.
If you ever want to see the opposites of colors, add a black and white layer and turn it on and off. So watch the red, orange over here and watch when it goes back to black and white, how it goes into a cyan for a second, which is the opposite of that red orange.
Oh, yeah, of
You
course.
look at the green over here, you're going to see a magenta purple as it goes back into black and white. Just for a split second, that's a fun,
Yeah.
it's a fun game to teach your grandkids. Okay. Undercover. It's not, but it looks like a Rick Avalos special, doesn't it?
Well, not being a portrait photographer, I liked the kind of the concept. It just struck me as a little bit flat, except for his face. I don't know what it would look like if some of the whites in the arch were a little brighter, but it just kind of jumped out at me that there's this bright face right in the center, and then everything around it is just kind of muted, flat on the darker side. But I like the concept.
Yeah, I have to agree. If these were a little bit more of some punch, I think we'd have even a little more separation on this back of this arch would make it stand out a little bit more. All right, so Rita has a good comment here. So this was again called Undercover. She says, I like the architecture, but the title had me expecting a blanket to be involved. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of the things that when you think about titles, we come up with words that seem appropriate, but you have to kind of stop and step back and think of it from a judge's point of view who may not understand the story. We name scenes by the city that it is, the port city by the beautiful bay. It's gorgeous, but we just call it, the name of the city. And while that may be true, titles aren't about necessarily naming the subject. Ricky, anything you want to add to that? Because we talk about this all the time.
Yeah, when it comes to titles, and it really depends on how a person, their perception, just that point that Rita made, because that's the way images were presented in competition, was always the title first, and then the image would be revealed. So it was building up an expectation. Now, on the other hand, I don't know how many of our friends here would remember Buddy Stewart. He was a PEC chairman for quite a few years, an excellent photographer. But anyway, his point was when it came to titles, that a title should only help an image and not hurt an image. His position was that, we're photographers. We're not writers, we're not poets, and maybe some are. But he wanted to allow a little bit of slack, when it came to the titles. And, when it comes to titles again, we've talked about this before. We want to keep them, as to the point as we can, and so that to give the viewer the expectation, the relationship of the title to the submission. One thing that really kills a lot of images or makers are foreign titles, foreign language titles that a judge or two or three or four or all of them have no idea what that title is saying. And you just don't want to make a judge think. And we've joked about that before, but there's a lot of truth to it.
Yeah, especially
I'd have called this arch criminal.
Yeah, see, something like that tells more of a story. It's a play on words.
Or arch enemy.
Arch enemy.
Right.
But even undercover, adding something else to it, like undercover agent or undercover thing, could have just taken it one step further. But what if it does, Rita, it does pull into your mind something else, and we can't help it because we're human beings, we have experiences. It can ruin it for the story you're trying to tell. And if you make the judge think, you've lost a couple of points.
Yeah.
Before we leave, Sammy had his hand up. Sammy?
Oh, no, I just was agreeing with Jeff on the highlights could be a little wider, but then also for me, I kind of liked being surprised that it wasn't what I expected. It's like a dad joke, right? You're like, oh, that I do like Cliff's suggestion though. Like, What was that title you suggested, Cliff?
Arch criminal.
Arch criminal. But again, right, you wouldn't necessarily expect this in your mind. So I kind of enjoy when there's that play.
You know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that was all. I like I mean, I think there could be more depth if those whites were a little more white, like Jeff had pointed out, but I like the depth that the image creates. I do not like his hand stuffed in his pockets, though.
Well, this is where I'm going. I appreciate that the maker wanted to frame the subject with the arch, but man, I see him to the column to the right, leaning his back into that column, the foot up against. But anyway, you know, just pushing him against that column and maybe an arm cross or something and an expression that pulls that thought process as far as because he looks just a little happy there, and I see more of an austere look that would be appropriate for this.
This is called Tarnish and Gold. Well, look at that. Everybody's jumping in there. Kim, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I was talking to you guys and just talking to myself.
We didn't hear you, huh?
Sorry about that. I like the shapes in this. I like the squares and the circles, and I like the textures, all sorts of various textures. And kind of the same color palette. It feels really nice to me. The presentation for me, I would prefer seeing that keystroke a little bit closer to the actual image itself.
More in here.
And not so far away. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and as far as a commercial piece, I think this is beautiful.
Kathy's up.
Yeah, I agree with everything Kim said. I think the one thing I would add, because I really love the colors in this, I just think it's very calming and very rich looking. I'm not sure exactly what the primary point of focus is, if it's the fork and the spoon, or if it's the platter, or the whole piece. So that's the only other comment I was going to make, but I could look at this a long time and be happy.
What was the title again, Jeffy?
Tarnish and Gold.
Sounds like a law firm.
Anyone else want to comment? Because just for fun, whoever wants to, because we have just a minute and a half, put in what you think it would score.
Yeah, go ahead and enter that in the chat box there.
There's an 88.
88.
82, 89, 79, 85, 90.
Because I know the maker, Jeff knows the maker, and this was at his state competition. It scored 100.
Wow.
You're lying.
So just for fun,
Beautiful image.
let's go on the 79. Ken, what was your reasoning there? Again, not picking on you, just if you don't want to say anything, fine, but what was your thoughts?
Okay.
There he is.
To me, it didn't have a whole lot of impact. The black border didn't seem to fit real well. One question I had was, how long ago did this score 100?
Well, it's been a little while.
And does it matter?
Yeah.
How so?
Like the images we were looking at before that Rick said, or Jeff said were several years ago. I think the standards change. And a portrait that may have scored really high 20 years ago probably wouldn't score high. You guys have made that comment.
Yeah, and that's you're right. That's a valid point.
I've seen images today that score 100 that I would be lucky to put in 82. So it's a difference in preferences and time and experience and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Right. And back in the day when this entered, because I remember when this came up too, and the maker, it was just absolutely stunning, breathtaking image. Now we look at it, and a couple of you talked about the black mat. We talked about the gold key line. It's too close. I would like to see that more subtle. We had a couple people say, well, what's the subject matter exactly? So things change. So because it scored 100 once, doesn't mean it's always going to be 100 based on a different panel. But that's what's interesting about, thank you guys for putting some scores in there, because it just kind of, I guess the point there is it kind of shows from our own points of view, regardless if you're schooled or not in judging, it gives us, that's why we have 5 judges, right? Ricky, isn't that why?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, I think the experience helps. You know, I've only been doing competition for 6 years now or something like that. And the images that I see that score well, generally speaking, whether it's portraits or commercial or landscape or whatever, are stunning. This one did not have that sort of impact to me when it came up.
And you know, you do make an interesting point, Ken, because, and I mean, currently, even right up to the time that they started this MIR, when it was a regular loan or merit category, you know, once you go through the merit judging, then they put their panels together for loan. And there's some images that come through that are being considered for loan. And you might stand there and look at a judge next to you, a colleague, and look at him, and you're looking and saying, how did it even merit? And here we are wanting to consider it for loan. So, you know, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there's the way that they appeal to one person is going to be totally different, or could be, from someone else that's sitting one chair next to him.
The technology now for both cameras and post-processing is orders of magnitude better than 20 years ago. I think that also plays a big factor in what we're used to seeing now versus comparing to a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Sammy, did you have something you wanted to add? We didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're fine. I just had a question. As I've watched different judgings and stuff, like I understand, you know, as you're a portrait photographer, it being a challenge to judge a landscape, but still you see landscapes. I find when I see commercial pieces like this, like like impact. I'm like, I don't know, it's a fork and a spoon on a plate. Like,
Well,
and that's like, maybe this is why Sam does not judge yet.
yeah.
How do you find as you move towards the possibility of being a judge that you become well versed enough in what that world really looks like as far as commercials, so that it doesn't come up and you're like, it's a fork and a spoon on a plate?
One of the things you'll find real quick is that, again, it's hard to sit there and look at an image and we like it or dislike it because of our own desires. And while that's very much something you have to rely on to be a judge, you also have to step next to yourself and be a little bit more objective about it and look at the 12 elements of design and see, does it answer some of those elements? It doesn't have to always be all of them, but does it answer several of them well? Or does it raise questions like Ken's brought up? So again, it's really not a right or a wrong thing, and time and styles and fashions do play a big part of it. But it does come down to a lot of times. I mean, I've sat on a panel where all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I got to go 78, and they're in the upper 80s. And you have to listen to the fellow judges, and maybe they've made a point. You have to realize, oh, I gave it a 78 because I didn't care for the purple or whatever. But the story, that purple works. Okay, I'll see it and I'll change my score. So it's quite a process to go through things, but it also does, like you're saying, it comes down to Ken's noticing the dark matte and all those kind of things. And if that makes it not go high for him, that's okay too. So there isn't a right or wrong. That's why we want to do this show, to show you that it's not, there's not a specific criteria that makes it 100 or makes it a 75. So
Yeah.
go to the next thing. It's very much a personal taste, but yet don't use your personal preferences to make that judgment. So let's go on something a little different here. Let's go to Prentice's Pride. Sorry, a little small there.
And that's why those 12 elements are so important, because in you know, this one old judge said something to one time, just stuck with me. He says, you know what? We all bring our own prejudices to the table, but we have to work with those 12 elements to keep us grounded.
Right. So then if, for example, just to ask a quick question, Rick, if that image comes up and it's not impactful for you, you can then go to those other 12 elements, be like, well, the lighting is good.
In a sense, yeah, it's almost like a score sheet. If you can only come up with one or two of those items, are they strong enough to give it a higher score? And when Rick was starting out talking about, when you're sitting on a panel for national competition, whatever, you have between, what is it, the original numbers, like 5 to 7 seconds in the judge's mind to put it into a category and then another maybe 6 or 7 seconds to give it a numbered score.
Right.
So we can be wrong too. We can sit there and go, yeah, I'll give that whatever exceptional category, but it's going to be an 88, and I see, I missed that.
Yeah.
This one
And
I
you
want
know,
to
that's actually to the maker's favor.
sure.
Because the more time you look at an image and the more time you have to dwell on an image, the more chance you're going to find more faults.
I will say this is definitely a rare type of an artist because I mean this looks like it pretty much is all done as a drawing, whether it was done in the software or whether it was done with charcoal or pen or crayons or whatever. But and for those of you who are not sure, when you enter the artist category, it's usually a composited piece, and you have to show your what's the term, Rick? Elements or steps? Not the
Yeah, the
steps,
reference,
but
yeah.
so reference pieces. So that's why there's three different. This might have been the original sketch where the artist said, "Okay, I want to draw a buffalo." Excuse me, a bison. And then here's a more advanced, and then the finish, and then you combine them or whatever to come up with that. So yeah, that's why there's three thumbnails. Sometimes you'll see these group families of 20 people, and there might be 20 thumbnails along the side or the bottom of each individual person because they were photographed separately and put together. So it's more about obviously the things we've been talking about, density and sharpness and color, and but also the quality of the artwork. Do the pieces go together well? Does it look like it was photographed as one time? So that's a lot different perspective here. And this one is probably not even fair to throw at you, but does anybody have a comment?
Strikes me as a well, it definitely looks like something with charcoal or chalk drawing, but I see some what I would consider inconsistencies as far as for the range and everything. You got the nice detail on the grasses and the face, but the eyes almost look human, and then the rest of the body lacks some of the same detail with the rest of it. If you're going to deal, in my experience opinion, you'd end up with more detail in across the body here with the image, because you got the grass is almost the same plane as the body, so you should have to me some more detail.
And somebody else had their hand up too. Who else is?
Kathy.
Yeah, I actually have a question, and if this is the wrong time, just tell me. But I mean, to me, I'm having a really hard time seeing anything photographic related to this. So does the category basically end up being a photograph of artwork, or does it need to be artistic work applied to some kind of photographic element?
Really good question. I'm thinking the same thing. Rick, what's your determination of that?
Yeah, you know, we see submissions in the artist category that start from sketches and make their way through. And with these reference images, there, as I understand it, there has to be some photographic element involved in the image. But for instance, on the top, you see that sketch, and then down below, you might see a photograph of the foreground with the grasses, and then how they're incorporating them all together. So does that make any sense, Kathy? Is that?
It does. Thank you.
Next, we have an image called Heaven's Light. Sorry, it was a small thumbnail. Again, I'm not going to take this one away, but this is a small thumbnail, but I think it's unique, but it's not going to be sharp. So don't make that any of your comments, because this is, if you notice, I've enlarged it to 367% in order to get it to you see it. So ignore the lack of sharpness, but let's talk about the composition, the color harmony,
Go ahead.
Yeah, this one smacks to me of my one and only merit to date. And basically, I'm seeing enough details in there. I like the nice curved lines and everything of this is the great architectural shot, and then the blue offset on the windows there gives a very nice touch. So you kind of get drawn to that, following the various curves. You work your way around, and that you kind of get overwhelmed with the white colors, but that touch of blue really helps make it.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff I really absolutely love when people do this kind of a thing. I've got a couple of images that I've tried with church ceilings, and it's tough because there's so much going on to be able to not just rely on all the cool lines and patterns, but to actually have a point of origin, to have a story, to have a reference to go through it. And like you said, having these blue windows kind of on that third, we've got a lot of the archways going to the left and leading to. So it does allow you to wander around the scene. These little uh, areas that are of darkness in here give you some points to ponder, but you still come back. Repetition and patterns and density give you some comfort. You can anchor you back over here and here. The mat, I think, is done very well. So I would be real proud of this image myself. So in her eyes.
Don, go ahead.
Basically, yeah, the eyes, I always make a statement when I see eyes like this, is eyes into which a man could jump and not worry about coming out.
That's good. I like that.
That's the iris. I love the side lighting and the overall, the detail. You can basically see each strand. You can see the cable knit in the sweater. The one thing is slightly off-putting for me is the white of the eyes. It seems a little bit too it seems too bright. It just doesn't quite feel natural to me. It brings them out too much.
Michael's got his hand up. Yeah.
I think Sammy's gone. I don't see her on the list anymore.
Sure, I'll go ahead and comment. I like it. I like the composition. You know, at first I was thinking maybe she should be, or that the part of the left could be brought in a little bit and put her, you know, right there more, a little bit more center. But I think the space over there works. I think on this one here, it does work. That, you know, the idea is, you know, do we have the top part of her head cropped, or do we have all the way the top of the head still exposed and leave a little bit of cushion in there? I think it works with this one. It does bring me right there to her face. I agree with what Don was saying in that, is that, you know, now with some of the software and so forth, we can isolate certain features and so forth. And in this case, eyes, you can over brighten them at times. And I think they do stand out a little. It looks a little bit unnatural given the way the rest of the lighting works. Aside from that, I like the lighting in general. I was just trying to figure out the one thing I was looking at is like over on camera right, you know, when we look to the right side of her head, there's a little bit of, is it a little bit of maybe haloing that's back there against the, like right in through there. Does it look like it's a little bit brighter, meaning maybe it was a background replacement, but we
This or on the background?
the background. I'll just kind of say it like where it bleeds right back into the background. Does it look like there's a little rim where maybe this was pulled in and it was a background replacement, but maybe there's a little bit of edge there where we that looks a little bit lighter and unnatural against the other part of the scene. And maybe I'm
something
wrong.
that we're not allowed to do this in judging, but since what we're doing here.
And now that you zoom in, I think it might actually be natural, and maybe I was just missing it. But just my eyes, when it was further back there, it just looked as if there was kind of a little bit of lightning right where I would say
Yeah,
right there, right
there.
in there.
Yeah.
It just, to me, it looked like it was a little bit
Well, I
off,
think
a little bit unnatural, but I could be completely wrong on that
I
too.
think what's kind of happened here is the vignette that Don mentioned is maybe a little bit much, and because of that, there probably was a lighter area of the background here and a darker area of the background here, but because of how it's been handled, this accentuates that, and then because of that strand of hair is in there, I probably would have cut that strand of hair out of there altogether. But Rick, let's go to you, the portrait expert of the year. What do you feel? I have a question for
Well,
you.
you know, I think all of the points have been valid. My concern, and I just really appreciate the contact that the photographer has with the subject. You know, they're in harmony. There's no doubt about that. Technically, though, I was a little concerned with the blocked up shadows above her forehead and her hair, as well as across her sweater, from camera left to camera right to the shoulders. Yeah.
You know, one of the things I learned, I think it was a guy named Jeff Johnson. If you lighten the eyes, you need to keep the top of the orb darker because it's shaded.
So that was my next question for both you guys, portrait artists. What do you think about the eyes and how they're handled here?
In my
I think
opinion, it's too white and it's not.
This eye is the pupil is different than this.
The top third of the eye white should not be that bright.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bottom line is that, and that's the term that we hear, is that the eyes have been overworked.
Yeah. And if you look at the other thing here too that I'm seeing is, and a minor thing, because this part of the face is, here's the light coming in this way, you can tell by the shadow and so on. It's a little bit of a low light shadow because the shadow is mostly here. We kind of want it to be more this way, but that's minor. Whether it's the lighting, whether it's the post-processing, the pupil of this side, the color is so much less dense than this. And it just seems, now that's not to say that maybe she didn't have or does have two different color eyes and things like that, but those are things I think judges will comment on, is that the pupil here is so much darker than this one.
Yeah.
Just little things like that. And I'll also tell you that this was also a mirrored image from a few years back. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. As my dad used to.
I see it as a mirrored image. There were just a couple of little things.
Yeah. This is called Rose. Portrait artist, what do you think? Rick, what do you think?
Compositionally, I think it's a very, very strong image. You know, nice light direction coming in from camera left, obviously. In terms of the posturing or posing, if you want to call it that, I just feel it's a little less elegant than it can be. You know, we have this really strong vertical line of her arm from her shoulder straight down to the bouquet. You know, I guess it could be argued, well, this is more of a contemporary avant-garde type of a look, but still, you know, we want to, for lack of a better phrase, just make sure we add grace or reveal the grace that is there. We've got really nice detail because of the lighting on the shadow side of the gown. But, you know, we're looking into the whites of the subject's eyes, but we have a really nice 2/3 view of the face. I think this would really be alluring with having that angle of the face, and then maybe just, you know, one of the frames, everything's the same, but just have the bride lift her eyes only and look right back at the viewer. I think that would really be, you know, a captivating capture. But, you know, I'm concerned about the lack of, I guess, elegance is what I'm looking for. But, you know,
well, it's really hard to pose a
Can I
bride
jump in here?
with this dress, with any dress, because you lose the shape and dimension of the legs and the tip of the hips and things to get more thing. But this little bit of a waist lean forward, she's got her weight on her front forward foot, so the lean forward does make it a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah, Cliff, what were you going to say?
Well, I see the story here to me. I mean, I see her with the bouquet dropped like that. I see her looking back on one phase of her life going into something darker. I mean, the expression on her face is like I've been rejected.
Wow.
And the bright to the side and the dark to the left, it's kind of a dark image to me. I mean, the story here is this: she's not elegant. She's depressed or dejected. That's
like she got left at the altar, as you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
It's funny that Cliff brings that up. Sorry, I didn't raise my hand, but
you're fine.
And I'll let Kim go. But I was just going to chime in that was kind of my initial thought too. Her expression just doesn't fit what I would expect that scene to reveal.
And again, that's why we have 5 judges, right, Rick?
Exactly.
Kim, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to agree with like what Cliff had said, that she doesn't look like a happy bride.
No.
It's more anxious.
And part of it, I think, is her posture, because
Right.
I feel like she is kind of caved in a little bit, you know, with her upper body rather than.
It does look heavy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Emotionally heavy.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
I think it's
And maybe part of it too is the long shadow, you know, why such a long face?
Yeah. The
the long
goes
shadow,
through.
which I think is a really interesting, creative way to do that. But I feel like her posture, she just doesn't. She doesn't look like it's the happiest day of her life.
No.
I think you have something, you nailed something there. It's definitely looking a little bit questionable. Oops, let me get rid of my tool here. Homeward Bound. All of you lovely landscape photographers in the group, anybody have a thought?
I'd like to offer
Except
something.
you.
Well,
Sorry.
and I want to approach this as kind as I can. To me, there's more of an image without the bird.
Wow. I'm gonna write that one down. Because every time I show Rick a beautiful landscape, he says, "Oh, what a great background for a family portrait." So this is so totally different. What else? Anybody else have any other thoughts on that? Ken's got his hand raised. Go ahead, Ken.
Like Rick said, the background is pretty nice, but the bird to me just looks out of place.
Ken, do you think it like at a scale?
Out of scale. It looks like it's a composite.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If that bird's flying, well, the wings are pretty sharp, so if it was flying, was taken with a fairly high shutter speed, but it's whether it's the scale or the distance between the bird and the trees, or if it's the bird was pasted in there, it just kind of looks off. That's the best way I can describe it. I almost thought it rather than a landscape, it struck me more as an artist piece.
How so, Ken?
Because it to me, it looks more like a composite than a single photograph.
Okay.
I think the thing is that the sharpness of the bird in the foreground versus the background is too close. Well, the bird's pretty sharp, and the background looks too sharp to be that far away from the bird. At least I'm not a great photographer, but as far as what I could do. And I think that's why it looks odd, is because the depth of field seems off.
Yeah, you've got some sharp trees there on the right and the left, and maybe kind of right in the middle. And the rest of them look kind of further away in fog or otherwise muted.
Well, I think there is kind of a fog going through here. At least that's the impression. These little softer gray areas, and then the sharper trees are where the fog is not. That's what I'm kind of getting out of this kind of thing. But it is an interesting piece.
A lot of key lines.
Yeah, I see that. I haven't seen this one for a while, and then all of a sudden recently I'm starting to see this again in competitions in some of the other states I've judged. Don't do it. Okay.
My comment on that, since I've still got a few seconds, the having taken some birds like that, what I'm seeing that looks inconsistent with the bird is basically the lights essentially behind the bird because of the shadows on especially the leading edge of the wings. To me, you should not be able to see those trees translucent through the wings, because of the light on that side should wipe out the right there, right there where your cross is, that one there, and there's a couple others. You can see the trunks through the wings.
Interesting.
That was a secondary thought to what following the bird out. I got over to those trees on the right, and those trees are inconsistent with the other trees that are there. You've got essentially deciduous trees out front, and what look more like evergreen trees towards the back. And those three, for starters, I would have cut the one on the far right. You've got those three little dots of whatever they are, leaves, or that just absolutely attract my attention.
Well, good calls. I agree with everything you're saying, John, because there's all those little things that, as we're making the scene, oh, that looks great, I love that, whatever, it's a little bit of thing. This is natural, so we'll leave it. But you're right. If it catches, whether it's a judge or an art buyer in a gallery, and it pulls your attention. So that little trick that I've showed you guys before, is where you flip your image upside down just before I'm ready to enter it. if there's things like this that catch my eye, that like that little spot there, I'll ask myself, is that helping my image or is it pulling the eye away? Because correctly or upright like we see it, these are subconscious. When you turn it upside down, while the whole image becomes like, whoa, what's going on there? You see this kind of stuff and you question, okay, if a judge looks at this and doesn't know what to do with it, you've taken time away from them, the points go down. So little things like that, I think, thanks for pointing that out, Don. That's very good stuff. This is called Virtuoso. Fantastic lighting, just all the way around. The key light or the kicker light that's hitting the profile is very nicely done. So it gives us the depth, the wraparound. We've got detail in the shadows here of this far side, a close side of the face in the shadow, but it's just enough to give us enough detail of the hair and the ear and so on. We don't need to see his eyes because he is looking here. Here's the story of the bow and the violin in his hands. So we have this beautiful triangle here of the story. So it tells us to follow these lines. And in the middle of the story is what he's doing. We are losing a little bit of detail. It seems like now, again, black tuxedo in a low lit area like this is definitely a tough one to do. So that's something maybe works against it. But even just showing a little bit of the cuff right there, the collar, the cuff over here, things like that. Anybody
Yeah.
else have anything they want to add?
Tim,
Yeah, I think this is gorgeous. I'm not a portrait photographer, but I sure do appreciate things like this. And it, like Jeff said, I love the lighting on it. I like the composition. I like just even the triangles, the angle of his lower arm with the head of the violin just brings you back into his face again. And it's very, very nice. The key line looks a little bit wonky to me on the two sides. It basically disappears, it seems.
Okay,
Um,
we'll let Paige say something and I'll talk about the key line because that's very important. I'm sorry, did I cut you off there, Kim?
and then, yeah, then just I think it's probably artist choice, but I feel like that front hand, at least on my computer, looks a little bit soft. And for something like this, I think I would rather like to see both hands sharp.
The one element that I feel is distracting is just the background itself. The area that's leading kind of between the bow and the violin up to the upper right.
Up in here?
Yes. Those lighter marks, I know it's not clone tracks, but that's the first thing that I think of.
Oh, I see. Yeah, here and here.
And then down at the bottom part of his arm, the darkness of the background, it just seems out of place.
Down in here.
Yeah. And I don't know, it could be my screen, but maybe a little bit of banding is going on with that background. I do enjoy the image, but I also agree with you, Jeff, that some of the detail is getting lost, like in the arm, his left arm, as far as the picture goes, for his suit.
Kim mentioned the stroke, and here's one thing that happens with a stroke is when you put it, and we refer to this as an attached stroke, you can see it just fine here as we go down in here. The stroke is similar color to the background, and especially over here, so it disappears. I will tell you that there's almost always going to be at least one judge per panel who will say that same thing, and you've lost points. So you could easily take it and make what we call a detached stroke. You could make this, first of all, you could make this color brighter so it stands out if you made it a little bit more of a white, but then all of a sudden, where it's dark here, then you've got a really, really bright stroke. So that doesn't always work, kind of is a different issue. You could easily take this stroke and detach it and move it out just a hair. So it sits all by itself. So it's got black on both sides of it. And then I would also then not make it bright so it stands out. So even this gray against the black alone is almost starting to get to be a little too bright. So I'd tone that down a little bit. So that's kind of, again, it doesn't seem like much, but when we're talking that these competitions, whether it's points or plus or minus or however the judging is done, it's little things like this that sound picky. We've said this, I think, every show that you got to pay attention to. 4 points, 4 awards, 4 things like that. But even just in general, it's training yourself to see the little things that maybe you'd never submit an image to or do this for a client, paying client, but you might see things similar to that in an image that you might want to change to make it stand out better, to make it look more better. All right, let's go on. Let's do this one. This is called the yellow bike. Kathy?
Since I asked you to go longer, I figured I should.
Good cover. Good cover.
I really like this. I think the patterns of the lines, the juxtaposition with the wheels on the bike, the colors, I just think this sets a really great mood. The framing around it, kind of that little bit wider key line, I guess. I'm not sure if that's what it is because it is wider versus the outer frame.
The lighter color here?
Yeah, it feels a little heavy to me, but I love the tonality in this. I think it's a great picture. It's got great energy to it.
Overall, like Kathy was saying, I think it's very, very nicely done. The bike to me seems to be a little too bright. I'm not seeing, it almost looks like the bike is in sunlight, but I'm not seeing any shadows to indicate that the sun is shining on the bike. So maybe it's just maybe a little too bright. Judging from earlier images and comments, this appears to be an older image due to the saturation and the matte. It's not something that I think would score as well today with the presentation. But overall, this is the kind of image that I wish I could figure out how to do myself. Because I see these all the time, people that come to our horses workshop and photograph the saddles and the tack and the ropes, and they come out with these really striking images, and I go in there and it's like,
looks like a saddle.
What do I do? I don't know what to do.
I'll jump in there for one more
Sure.
again.
Please.
On the right side, I would argue for either bringing the edge in to cut off the dark door, or to expand it out and have the entire dark door in there with its frame to match the one next to it. I would either cut it right down that line or expand it out and have both doors. Because the way it breaks the line over there, and you've got the grill work for the doorway. It just
up here.
It's a mismatch for me.
This is where clever titling tells a story. So I'm going to read the title, Filling Station. You'll get an image in your mind, and then you'll see this. Not that it's necessarily meant to make you laugh, but it's also creating a lighter tone of something. So, Ken, you still have your hand up. Was that from before, or do you want to go ahead?
Oh, well, I can say something. You gave it away by making your comment on the title. Because as soon as you said that, I figured it's not going to be a filling station. It's going to be
something different, yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. Well, and usually that doesn't happen. Usually the title is right, and the picture comes up in different points of view, but I just was kind of playing with that title. So what do you think about it, though?
Well, it's a clever title. The whites, at least on my screen, the whites of the cow's noses and the cow on the left's behind and legs, they look a little blown out. So I don't see a whole lot of detail on my screen. This is one of those with the matte. I would probably do a darker gray matte that matches the background a little bit better, so it's not quite as stark. The title is very clever, and title matches the image.
Yeah, well, and that's a big part of it. I agree with the matte. I would, again, this space here between the edge of the image and the key line starts creating that additional matte kind of a feeling, which pulls the viewer's attention away. And there's also, if you notice, the stroke along the picture where we lose it in several places. So like you down here, so I'd definitely eliminate that and move this in and go with the darker gray. I think that's well said. Don, you want to say something?
Yeah. So back again to my stock in trade was things that didn't quite match. Essentially looking at it now after some time, I see that it's the tails, but you've got the stringy stuff off the rear end of the mothers, especially the one that's in front. That curve there almost looks like horns for the calf. Otherwise, there's the detail and that the wider the gap between the key line doesn't help keep my eye there very well.
It pulls your
I do,
attention out here, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. The I like the ability of having caught the four together. You know, everybody keeps talking about rule of odds, but this is a rule of evens, and
Somebody else had their hand up, I think, after Don.
Let's do one more and we can call it a night or answer some questions. Top Glock. Anybody want to take a crack at this? And so I'll just kind of premise this first. In the commercial category, it's a totally different world. Back in the day, you had to submit what they called tear sheets, which could be the finished, and a lot of times because the guys in those days were shooting 8x10 transparency film or 5x7, it was the original image and then why it was shot. If it was for an ad for a gun, so it would have the name of the store or the manufacturer or something. And so this is tough. I know a lot of you guys don't do this kind of stuff, but let's hear your thoughts on quality and storytelling and things like that.
Kathy, go ahead.
I like there are a couple things several things I like about this. The background, I think that tone has come up a lot tonight. So I don't know, maybe it's just my night to like those colors, but it adds a richness to it. And the Glocks are known for being kind of straightforward, nothing fancy about them. So I like that juxtaposition from the equipment to the background. And I think it's from a lighting perspective, a lot of the features that I think, so I'm a shooter, I'll just say that. So this is where this is coming from, but
That's
a lot
good.
of things I want to see that in terms of features are very visible. So I don't have to go searching and wonder what things look like and where they might be positioned. So I think from that perspective, it's successful as well.
Michael.
Yeah, actually, Kathy, I'll say a lot of the things that I was going to say as well on that, as far as the color of the background I liked, and then to me also what just really stands out is just really, to me, good lighting, very good lighting, but also just the detail, every letter in there, every little every bit of the shape on the handle, every the trigger, I can look through it and everything is so sharp. I think to me, I like that about it, and the background is different, but I think it goes with this one to me.
Okay,
Rick, anything you want to add?
No, I got cut off again. We were talking about the usage and transparency, but this is what I would consider a true commercial image. Because a lot of times we'll see images that are put in the commercial category, and the question that comes to my mind is a question that an old commercial photographer told me one time, that when you look at a commercial image, the first thing you should be thinking is, what are they trying to sell? What are they selling? And there's no doubt here. And just like Michael was saying, I mean, the detail of all of the textures, the grip has a different texture than the side of the barrel, but there's fidelity there. It's well done.
Yeah, well, look at the trigger itself and how much the gradation of the tones on the front of the trigger, but you can even see the edge here and how the edge of it even stands out from the back of the trigger guard. I mean, this is exceptional commercial. I have no idea what this did or would have scored if it's entered, but this is exceptional. I'm sorry, Kim, both Kim and Paige. Paige, you were up first. What do you want to say?
I guess more or less ask, the background on this has a lot of depth and dimension, different tonality, and the gun itself seems, of course, I'm very much aware that this is a black gun, but it does not seem to have as much depth and dimension. It also looks like it's just floating in midair. And I'm just wondering if adding a little bit of shadow maybe to the background would help to ground the product a little bit better. So just kind of wanted to maybe get your thoughts on that.
Well, I know that the little bit I've shot of this stuff, I didn't really enter many of these kind of things in competition. The commercial category years ago was really difficult, really difficult. But the tear sheet, in other words, how it was used, helps the judge a lot determine how well the image was done. So all the things you're saying, I'm not saying are wrong or they're bad, but it is a advertisement for the gun, and it doesn't have to show or necessarily be sitting against a background or sitting on a table or something. And a lot of times, the floating element is a natural part of a even today, if you look at ads, they're trying to put some up. It's a natural part of floating. So the idea more is, was it cut out right? Is it lit properly? And again, relationship to the background is going to be more of a theme wise or color as opposed to if it's actually sitting in front of that background. So what you said isn't wrong. It's just the difference of point of view. Well, Kim's got her hand up for a long time. Your arm's probably getting tired. Go ahead, Kim.
Just a couple things. I feel like in relation to the background, I feel like the gun is tipped forward just a little bit and should be rotated clockwise just a little bit. One of the reasons why is because it's touching the whatever that little brass
These guys
head is on the
here,
back there. Yeah.
little rivet, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the trigger, it just looks like there's a really, really bright line on the backside of the trigger that could be darkened a little
Right here.
bit. And I do agree with Paige. I feel even though, the floating thing and everything, I feel like it needs a shadow somewhere, something to ground it just a little bit. Because it feels like just two separate pieces right now. It doesn't feel like a whole integrated presentation.
Well, that was kind of my point with an ad that if you look at ads, they usually aren't. The only integration is more in theme. Right or wrong, I don't know. But if you look at the lines, the vertical lines right here, 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 this thing is pretty straight as far as how the gun is built. It has a slant in the handle and of course the angle we're at. So it could have been tipped up a little bit more, like you said. I agree, but then a judge would say, "Well, it looks tipped because this that's not a right or a wrong. It's just kind of one of those things that happens." So I'm not arguing with you. I'm just telling you kind of what we come across. But, anyways,
The words, though, the Glock, the 17, Austria, 9x9 are all not straight. So it depends on if you're looking at the words or if you're looking at the front of the gun.
that's pretty right on there.
Oh, yeah. No, those are straight, but
But you're right.
the
It's kind of an optical illusion. I don't know, Rick. What do you see? Do you see a lot of? You don't see much commercial stuff these days in competitions, do we? Yeah, I think that's what's hard about this, the commercial, because a lot of times, like they do with things, the commercial panels, the judges were guys who, and it was usually guys who shot a lot of commercial work, and the things that they would say, the reflection of metals, and glass, the positioning of oh my gosh, it was just, and back in those days, it wasn't Photoshop added, so they would build tents out of nylon and cardboard to get the proper lighting and make the gun look three-dimensional by just all in lighting, and it was unbelievably intense at how these things were shot. So, all right, gang. I think we're about a few minutes after 8. I think we've done plenty of damage tonight. Thoughts on tonight's program, Rick? Anything you want to add to what we did?
Yeah. I really appreciate everyone's participation.
Ken, you have your hand raised. What do you want to say?
Well, I just want to say that I owe a lot of thanks to you and Rick and all your guests that have been on these shows, as well as the collection of judges that judge our local guild and the state and other states, because the feedback that I've gotten over the years has been tremendous. Probably 90+% of the comments are spot on. Occasionally you get comments that are out in left field that you can just ignore. But by and large, the work that you guys do with this show and the judges can eventually lead to
Yeah, that's the top of the ladder there, my buddy. That's so cool of you to get that top of the world in the World Cup, first place in the category. That's just absolutely outstanding. And Thank you.
Congratulations, Ken.
Thank you
Well,
for thanking us, but you still are the one that created the piece and made it look good. So it's all on you. It's all your fault.
Well, you helped me get more better.
Michael, what's your question, sir?
Yeah, I was going to echo Ken's comments in that real quickly. Is that yeah, I had an image that did okay this year at ASP, and I again same thing is the first place I think that one was shown was right here on your program, and
Right.
got some feedback here, and then I went on and made some of the adjustments that you guys had talked about here. Went on to a couple of other submissions as far as critiques and so forth and that, and a little tweak here, a little tweak there, and all of those things helped out. But not just on that image, but also on other things in that, right? This is always a great platform to bounce images off that I'm thinking about submitting, and I get the feedback and decide then, is it worth moving forward or not sometimes. But the other thing I was going to say is to Ken's point, all of these programs have been fantastic all the way through. I learned something not just on my own images, but also the feedback that you provide on images from other makers, other photographers. And then furthermore, I think this is a great idea tonight. It allowing the audience to be part of the, providing the comments. And again, hopefully some of what we're saying in our comments are consistent with what we've learned from you two and the other judges that you've had on the program. Hopefully there's something that we've learned how to judge, and taking that one step further, I have been a judge on a couple of other within a couple of other organizations, one of which was last night. And when I go into those things before, I would be terrified, but now
Sure.
thanks to programs like this, I can go in there and have some level of confidence that I can hopefully say something meaningful when I'm asked to provide the critiques.
Rick, are you back? What do you want to say?
yeah, I'm back. You should have
Welcome.
heard what I said, man. You guys just elevated the heck out of all of you. No, I just want to express my appreciation for your
No. Oh, no.
That was fun again.
He's very grateful for you. This is weird because we were on earlier before the show for
comments.
talking stuff, and the connection was just fine. So it's typical how it happens. And I did my little program the other night. Thank you for a lot of you who came in and joined in. And an hour before I was supposed to go live with 60 some people, my whole house went dark, lost power, lost everything, computer shut down in the middle of stuff. I'm like, oh no, what the heck? I had, what do you do? Fortunately, it came right back up. So that stuff happens. So
Kathy's got her hand up.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you as well, as somebody who hasn't competed and who's been predominantly a serious hobbyist for a number of years. I've been joining these groups for quite a while, and I will say finally, with the conversation tonight about titling, I have an image I've wanted to submit, and I just could not come up with the right title for it. And after the conversation tonight, I have it, so you'll see that one.
good, cool.
Next month.
Yeah,
But
you can see how the titling makes a big difference, doesn't it?
it really does, and just the difference in, I don't want to call it nuance because it's so much more than that, but what I'm able to see now that I never considered before has really improved my images. So I'm very grateful to all of you for that and for letting us be a part of it and learning that.
Talked to several of you about, Rick and I were talking about it again today, is we get into especially the PPA, PP Colorado world, and we do the competitions and we can earn merits, and then you get so many merits to get your master photography degree. But really, honestly, and I don't mean this in any kind of a knocking you new masters out there because you do phenomenal work, but that's the first step. You just come off the ground floor and you're up on level one. And that's why we want to continue. And I'm not talking about just getting more bars and medallions and stuff. That's always cool. But it's about, I found my, you can submit 13 images is the minimum that you need to get merits in the PPA to get your degree, plus another 12 of different types of merits. My goal, like my dad charged me with, was to get my degree on 25 print merits. So I did that like he did. I looked at those cases the other day. I wouldn't want any of you to see these images. They're so bad. They're 68s and 70s, and they're just like, how the heck did I get merits on that. And yet now I look at my stuff, and even when an image didn't do well the other day in the ASP thing, I'm still proud of it because it's how I wanted it to be, and it just didn't fit in with that panel or whatever. So it's about learning not just techniques, not just styles, not just how to play the game, but it's also, the most important thing is you're creating you're fine-tuning your art and your desires to put it out there. And I think I'm at a point where the style that I've created for myself doesn't fit into the competitions anymore. So that's fine. I've done it, but that's what it's all about. It's getting yourself to be better or more better as you go along. So it's not necessarily about having more things hang around your neck. It's about being more passionate and more satisfied with your work. Rick and I talk about that all the time, and that's why we keep doing this. That's why we're between the two of us. We have 100 years of experience, and all of the people all the judges, all the people we know. So we just want
this last June was 50 years for me.
Yeah. Well, it was 48 years for me last month. So, it's funny when I say that my back hurts a lot more. Anyways, all I want to do is thank you guys for following along and being part of this. We're not trying to create this cult. We're not trying to create anything, but just you guys have been such wonderful friends. I hate to use the word followers, but thank you for coming back over and over again. We got a lot of cool things planned. So thank you guys for consistently allowing us to give you opportunities to keep learning and keep getting more better.
No, I just want to, again, thank you guys so much for your participation, for the comments. This is always such a learning experience for me. And I do appreciate the comments, and well made and well thought out, and a long time to look at an image to make an assessment of it.
And there's a groove you can see, when you do it more often, you get a groove, you get an idea of how to get to the point quickly with the elements of design help. But I think that you guys did a phenomenal job of making comments, getting to the point. There's several of you that I was really impressed with. Not that I don't mean to sound surprised, but good job, you guys. So thanks for joining in tonight. All right, gang. Thank you again for tuning in. We appreciate it. More to come from us. We'll see you in a month with our next show. Who's our guest that night? Rick, tell us about it.
Gabriel Alonso.
Phenomenal human being, phenomenal image maker, phenomenal musician. He'll make you laugh the whole show. You can't miss that one. We got some other good people on board for the rest of the year as well. So, as usual.
Gabriel's an excellent judge.
He is, yeah.
He picked out a couple of flaws in my image. And once I fixed those, it won IPC and won World Cup.
Nice. Yep. He's a smart guy. Okay, gang.
Cliffy, thanks again, buddy.
Yeah,
Really
Cliff.
appreciate it.
Glad to do it.
Awesome glue in the gaps here for us. Or maybe no, he's more of the actual foundation. He's the steel girders that go down into the plant.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Thank you for watching the Image Critique Show with Jeff Johnson and Rick Avalos. Learn more by checking them out at theimagecritiqueshow.com.